Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's Fireside Chat. I am Min Ling, your host, and we are so excited to have the wonderful Scott Simon here with us today to talk about daily practice to ignite your courage and purpose. Scott and I have known each other for over 10 years, so I'm really excited for this conversation. But before we get started with the Fireside Chat, I just quickly want to share a little bit about the Grateful Giraffes for those of you tuning in on our YouTube live stream. So the Grateful Giraffes are a vibrant community of over 800 members who value gratitude, wellness, and impact, and are both spiritual and grounded at the same time. We come together to co-create a lot of meaningful experiences while also building a community-owned lifestyle brand dedicated to human flourishing. So you can find out more about us at gratefulgiraffes.com, or you can also watch other fireside chats on our YouTube channel. So today's fireside chat is with Scott Simon. Scott is a happiness entrepreneur, founder of the global Scare Your Soul movement, and author of Scare Your Soul: 7 Powerful Principles to Harness Fear and Lead Your Most Courageous Life. His work in courage building has transformed thousands of lives across multiple continents, from Fortune 500 executives to aspiring entrepreneurs. Scott's own personal transformation from a painfully shy introvert to a bold adventurer sparked a mission to share practical tools that empower others to build courage like a muscle. Scott's courage building strategies have particular resonance with purpose-driven leaders and entrepreneurs seeking to courageously pursue their most impactful work and create positive change around the world. We're so excited to have you here. Welcome to the
Good.
Fireside Chat, Scott.
Thank you. That was a mouthful, and thank you for all of that. It's so great to be with you. Great to be with all of you. And I remember hearing about the Grateful Giraffes from you a couple of years ago, and I think you were kind of newer to the
Oh,
whole.
just a year ago.
Oh, a year ago.
Mhm.
And yeah, lots happened in the past year. It seems like 2 years, and I'm so thrilled that you guys are growing and it's such a vibrant community. So wonderful to be with you.
Yes, well, thank you so much. And I really would love for you to share a little bit about your journey. I mean, I met you like years ago, so I knew you before this version and this iteration, and seeing the transformation. But I would love for everybody to hear a little bit about your journey and how you became a leading expert around happiness and courage and really living your purpose.
It's my pleasure. So I started off very different from where I am currently, to say the least. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, probably the shortest, shyest kid in my grade. I was bullied for many years. Two boys used to swing me around in circles and let me fly off into the bushes in front of our public school. Dislocated my arm 3 times. And so I led what I really considered to be the invisible life. I was shy, I was reserved, and my sense of self-worth was as low as you could imagine. And I remember even a time when a teacher in high school created a study hall for just one person, for me, because I was eating alone in the cafeteria. And I think there was this interesting focal point, a really important moment in my life when I was 10 years old. I won't tell you guys my entire life story, don't worry. But when I was 10, I was in a school choir. I don't know if anybody on this call or watching on YouTube was in a choir. Okay, great. And there's that inevitable experience where you're preparing for a choir performance. And my substitute choir teacher gave me a solo line in a single song. And the song was 76 Trombones from The Music Man. And when the entire grade started, this is fourth grade, I'm 10 years old, came around to me to sing my solo line, I choked up. I couldn't sing. I was literally speechless. And instead of just continuing on, he stopped and started the entire grade over again. And of course, the second time around, the same thing happened. He then started the choir over again for the third time. And I remember being bright red, standing like a statue. And he came around and he was so angry at me for not being able to utter this phrase. And he said to me, clearly, you can't sing. Why don't you just mouth the words for the rest of the year? And for any of you who have been told in your past that you were not enough, that whatever you felt proud of was not good enough, not smart enough, or strong enough, or tall enough, or certainly didn't have a good enough voice, that sunk in, and I didn't sing again for 35 years. I finished grade school. I switched high schools, again, suffering through low self-worth and shyness. I went to one college, Tulane University, and I then transferred to Skidmore College. And then at the end of all of that wonderful education, at the age of 21, I was working the alternative music aisle at a local record store in a strip mall here in Ohio. And I honestly didn't think that anything would ever change or get better. And then I received one call, and that call changed my life. It was a call to see if I would like to volunteer to teach English to Holocaust survivors in a low-income neighborhood of Tel Aviv. And everything in me screamed, say no, don't do this. I didn't know the country, I didn't know the language, I didn't know how to teach. I had never met a Holocaust survivor, and for some reason, and I urge everybody to think about those times in our lives, Max and John, and to think about those moments when everything screamed say no, but for some reason we said yes. And so I said yes. I got on a plane from JFK to Ben Gurion Airport, and I had a panic attack on that flight, coming to terms with what I had just agreed to. And I wrote out 8 words in a little blue Mead spiral notebook that was in my backpack. And the 8 words that I wrote on that first page were the ones that inform my work today. It is the foundation of the Scare Your Soul movement that I'm so blessed to be a part of. And those 8 words were, do one thing every day that scares you. And that's what I did for a year, Minling. I did one thing that pushed a comfort zone every day for a year. And I wrote it in that spiral notebook, and then I bought another one, and then another one. And as I talk about in my book, I went from these small little actions of saying hello to somebody in Hebrew for the first time, or getting on a bus for the first time, to falling in love, to climbing mountains and traveling by myself, meeting people from different faith communities. And I came back absolutely on fire, a different, changed person than the person who got on that plane in the first place. A lot of wonderful and interesting things happened after that, which I'm happy to talk about, including meeting a wonderful mentor who was at Harvard at the time, teaching positive psychology, and meeting a great guy at Stanford teaching behavior design. But the last thing that I'll tell you all about my journey is that after I had started to lead this life of doing one thing every day that scares me, I decided to confront that fear that I told you all about when I had that choir teacher tell me, you can't sing, and I didn't sing for 35 years. So what do you do with a fear like that? What do you do with a fear that sits on your shoulder for all these years? What I did was bring an acoustic guitar to the busiest restaurant in my city, and I sang in front of about 100 strangers. You can maybe feel the butterflies rising in your stomach if you put yourself in my place. But I sang in front of these strangers, and A, was terrible. Like, nothing about the experience was great, but it did not matter. And that really is the point. In 7 minutes, exploded this fear. It became a position of power and of enjoyment and of just freedom. And I wrote a Facebook post about that experience that night, and the post went viral and has made its way around the world. And now I lead a courage movement based on the momentum that arose from that experience and that Facebook post. So, a very long answer to your very short question about my journey, but I hope that people can see their own journeys through moments of fear and trepidation into moments of courage, maybe even ones that are accidental that end up changing our lives.
That's such a beautiful story. I didn't know part of that, even though I've known you for many years. I didn't even know all of the origins, but that's amazing that you did all those things and that one question, like do some, or that one phrase, do something that scares you every day, like that has been like your mantra and how you live your life. And it's so beautiful that how that one statement has changed and transformed your life. Let's talk a little bit about, what is courage, first of all, because I think, we were briefly talking before everybody came on, but we all have these like preconceived notions of what courage is or what it takes to be courageous, and how do you define courage, and how do we start to tap into it for ourselves?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I was on a podcast recently that was an uber business oriented podcast. And we actually started talking about destiny in in the podcast. And then we spent the entire rest of it talking about destiny. And I really think courage unlocks our destiny. Maybe we'll get there a little bit later, but I'll stay a little tactile at the beginning, and then we can talk maybe a little broader about why doing courageous things allows us to lead our best and most destined lives. So technically, if you look at the literature, if you look at the field of positive psychology or of psychology, the concept of courage is really stepping into fear or discomfort for the sake of a worthy goal. That happens to be I think, a really solid view of courage. So, stepping into fear or discomfort for the sake of a worthy goal, not just flinging ourselves off a cliff for no reason whatsoever, but to actually do something that feels like it's making a shift for ourselves or for somebody else. And that really is something that I think is part of a mythology around courage. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. If I were to ask each one of you, if we were having a conversation over a cup of tea at Cafe Gratitude or somewhere in LA, and I said, "Have you done brave things?" Almost everybody will say, "Absolutely, I have. I do them all the time." If I say, "Are you a courageous person?" the answers start to change. And I think part of my mission is to remind people that we are all indeed courageous. We have done courageous things in our past, and we will do courageous things. Um, Maya Angelou said that courage is the most important virtue because all other virtues are built upon it. It's almost like the foundation stone for everything else. I know we'll talk about gratitude in this conversation, but I even think that courage is an essential part of gratitude, which we can get to. So I think when we begin to shift our perspective and say that courage is not something that just the Martin Luther King Jr.'s or the Rosa Parks or the Gandhis of the world possess, but that we indeed all have the ability to be courageous in our lives, that's the first step of owning a courageous life. So much of this is about taking action, and so many of us wait for the moment or the opportunity, or if this happens, then I'm going to be courageous. As soon as I get this relationship where I want it to be, then I'm going to be able to quit my job and do this. And we wait. And I counsel people not to wait. I counsel people actually to take action consistently and in small ways and in ways that link up with our destiny. And that's where things start to get really exciting and juicy and fun, where stepping into discomfort isn't like this grind. Let me just make a little bit of a corollary. For those of you with a meditation practice, okay, the first time that you sit on your cushion and say, "I'm going to do this," and And then all of a sudden your mind is a monkey mind. It's all over the place. And 5 minutes feels like a half an hour. And sometimes you get up and say, you know what, this I can't do this. This is just not for me. But you sit back down on that cushion for a few days and it starts to get a little easier. You start to get a little bit more comfortable and it actually starts to integrate into your life. It becomes a practice, just like a yoga practice or a running practice. When we start to implement a courage practice, ooh, this is so good. When we start to implement a courage practice, we start to open doors in our lives to connection and love and growth and innovation and entrepreneurship. And that's a beautiful, magical life and a life that we are all destined to lead. The only question is, are we going to step into those moments of discomfort?
I love how you brought up that courage as a practice. It's not like this one thing that's like this defining moment in our lives where we're like, okay, now we're going to do something. It's a daily practice that we can integrate and implement. I would love for you to talk a little bit about like how do you get over that hump? Because I think a lot of people that initial discomfort, that initial fear to even do some of the things that you mentioned, like I think people will still be paralyzed by singing in front of a crowd, including myself, and not want to do and not even take that first step. So how do you start to, take the step without the fear or with the fear? And what advice do you have for people around that?
I in no way want to suggest that getting up and standing in front of 100 strangers and singing is a good first step. That was a step that had occurred years after I began my practice. And I've had experiences throughout my adult life, not all of them happy and joyous, that required courage. When my daughter was in seventh grade, one of her friends who was over for dinner on a Friday night ended up playing in the street outside our house and was hit by an SUV. And I heard the kids yelling and screaming, and I ran outside and I ended up standing over her body in the middle of the street, holding off traffic on both sides. Um, I'm not a hero here. What I am is somebody who had implemented a courage practice, and I knew in that moment that I could, through breath and intention and service and love and bravery, I knew that I could handle it. And so sometimes these things arise in moments of crisis. Sometimes they arise in moments of opportunity, in our careers or in our relationships. Saying I love you first is a brave, courageous act, right? Dealing with rejection when we're applying for new jobs or the fear of failure, those are all courageous acts. And when we implement a courage practice, we start to hone that opportunity, that muscle, to be able to deal with larger issues when they come along in life. Now, I want to answer your question. The key in my mind is breaking things down into small, actionable steps. And I'm not telling you anything that you don't know or that the people on this call don't already deal with either in their businesses or in other parts of their lives. But when it comes to courage, I think people think that you need to take these big bites at the apple. And my counsel is actually to do the opposite. It is to understand deeply what we need to do in this world, right? This plugs into purpose. This plugs into overcoming fears and obstacles that we all have. We've all led lives that have led us to be afraid of things, sometimes rightly, sometimes wrongly. But to be able to break those down into manageable, actionable steps so that we don't have to take a huge bite out of the apple, but we can indeed take action in a way that feels both doable and that we can celebrate and that we can build from. And so when I talk about a courage practice, I don't talk about those big things of standing in front of restaurants and singing in front of 100 people. I talk about smiling at a stranger, or I talk about buying a cup of coffee for somebody in line and then having a conversation with them, or asking someone who intimidates you at work for coffee, or um, taking a course or being part of something where we need to be a beginner again, kind of walking into a beginner's mind, which is sometimes hard for those who have mastery in certain aspects of life to feel like you're a beginner again. That's where we start to gain self efficacy, a sense of agency, a sense of power and momentum. And a great writer named Alex Korb talks about something called the upward spiral, where when we feel stuck or we feel apathetic, that taking these small actions and sometimes doing it with an accountability partner, which I would love to with you about, we start to reverse this downward spiral of apathy and sadness, anxiety, depression into joy, momentum, passion, commitment, service. So it really starts to transform our lives in a really special way.
Yeah, it is like this. It is just the little moments and those little acts that can start to change. It's almost like when you do those small acts, you become another person in doing those acts. And so I guess, who you are, your essence also changes as well too. And let's talk a little bit, like you said, about accountability partners and why it's so important, and how do you create that environment, because environment is what allows people to morph and change and to grow if we have the right environment.
Oh, this is so huge, and I'd like to just like a tiny little anecdote. A friend of mine asked me to go to a yoga class this past Saturday, and I said I haven't seen you in a long time. It would be great. And the yoga class was at 7:15 in the morning on a Saturday, and I went, and it was an amazing class, and we reconnected, and I saw all kinds of other people. I guarantee you, if she wasn't waiting for me there on a mat next to me, I would not have gotten out of bed and gotten to a yoga class at 7:15 in the morning. So accountability is a real thing, and we can find it and leverage it in all kinds of ways. I'd love to just tell you a quick anecdote about how accountability kind of came into my life and how this translates into something called one-to-one, which I want to offer to all of you today, which I think is an absolutely simple and life-changing practice. Um, but it begins with an email that I got from a woman named Carly. And so I got this email, and the email said the following: Hi, Scott, my name is Carly. You don't know me, but I really need to talk to you. Could we meet at your house this Saturday night at 11 p.m.? Please don't say no. Thank you, Carly. I read it, and I think most people that I know would have deleted that email. Who is this person, and why do they want to come to my house? But as you all know, John and Max and everybody else that's listening, I do one thing every day that scares me, and I still do. Um, so I said yes, and I responded to Carly, and I said, "Yep, here's my address, and I look forward to seeing you." So that was on a Tuesday. I had to wait for the entire week until the weekend. Um, and Carly did arrive at my house exactly at the time that she said and knocked on my front door. And I opened it, and she was there. Was ripped shirt, tattoos, jeans, long blonde hair. And she said, "Hi, I'm Carly. We need to talk." Okay, so I welcomed her in. I had a little French bulldog named Morty who was with me, and Morty kind of walked with us into the living room, and we sat on the couch. And she said to me the following: My life is really hard right now. I'm about to get divorced. I have 3 kids, and my youngest was just diagnosed with a terminal illness. And I'm hanging on by a thread, and I see you online, all your scare your soul and happiness work and courage work, and I just felt like maybe we could talk. And so we did talk. We talked for about 3 hours on my couch. And I shared all of my vulnerabilities and my feelings about being a single parent and failing and all of my struggles, and she shared hers. And we became soulmates that night. And on her way out, she looked at me and she said, "It's going to be a really hard week because we're going to be moving towards this divorce and the lawyers are getting involved this week. Would you send me 5 things you're grateful for each night this week? And I'll send you 5 things that I'm grateful for." And I said, "Sure, that's fine. I'm happy to do that." I had had a gratitude practice in my past, a gratitude journal, and I know the power of gratitude. And so that week, without repeating, we shared 5 things by text. It was really powerful and really nice. And so we continued on, again, not repeating. And one week led to another, and one month led to another. And recently we hit 9.5 years of sharing 5 things every night that we're grateful for without repeating, or at least we don't think we're repeating. We're trying not to repeat. That has transformed my life. 5 things every night by text has changed my life. And having an accountability partner like Carly, who I've only seen in person probably 5 times in 9.5 years. One of them was to officiate her wedding to her now new husband. And I could talk to you. Thank you, Max. It is a powerful habit on so many levels. We could have a fireside chat just on this topic of why being a benefit finder and looking for things every single day that you're grateful for, and then texting an accountability partner is powerful. But she and I have achieved a level of closeness that transcends all relationships. And then we made a shift. Get ready. I had obviously been doing work in courage. And so I asked her at one point, would you mind if we changed? And instead of sending 5 gratitudes a night by text, what if we sent 1 gratitude a night and 1 risk we took that day? Okay, 1 gratitude and 1 risk. This has become the accountability part of my courage practice. So every night I know before I go to bed, I take out my phone and I tap to her 1 thing that I'm grateful for that day. Again, not repeating. So it's new. Sometimes they're not happy things. Sometimes they're challenging moments in life, which is one of the lessons we've learned being gratitude partners, is that when you have a gratitude practice that intense, you start being grateful for the hard moments in life, which is a beautiful way to lead life. And then think about this for a moment. When I know that at 10 o'clock at night, I'm going to have to text Carly 1 risk I took that day, I'm thinking all day long of risks that I need to take because I know I have an accountability partner on the other side. This combination of gratitude and courage each night with somebody who is there for me and equally bringing their gratitude and courage to the table has been life-changing. And it has provided that elemental sense of celebration and of accountability to what I think is maybe the most important practice there is, and that is having a courage practice. So this has led to new relationships, new job opportunities for her and for me. It has led to a deeper sense of who we are in ourselves. And this question about what is 1 risk you took today keeps me on track of having a courage practice. So that's where the accountability function has flowed through my life. And this one, we call it one-to-one. I gift it to you. Find somebody in your life that will agree, even if it's for 5 days, to send 1 thing that you're grateful for each night. If you want to expand it to five, that's fine. And then one risk you took that day. And I guarantee you, even after 5 days, much less 9.5 years, you will start to see that during your days, you're paying attention to both of those things. And when you combine them, gratitude and courage, it changes lives.
Wow, that's super inspiring, that you have this practice for so long, and it's also confronting. I'm like, oh my God, like doing something that's the gratitude's the easy part, but like the courage part of the risk, I was like being confronted. I was like, do I really want to take this on? That seems a little scary,
Yeah.
to do, one thing. Um but it is true. You shift the way that you look at yourself, and you shift the way that you approach life when you can do that. And even like you said, talking to a stranger. I know we met randomly at like a tailor shop,
Good.
like over 10 years ago, by you approaching and talking to me, and I was just like, who is this person talking to me, And then we've grown into like this
Look at us
beautiful,
now.
I know, for over 10 years now. And so it's inspiring that you're doing that, because I can only imagine, we only had one conversation, but the ripple effect, that all these other conversations that you're opening up with so many other people that have led you to, the life that you're living in. I think this flows really well into this destiny part, and stepping into your destiny and purpose. And I think a lot of people are searching for that, not sure where to go, and they're thinking long term. But um how do you have destiny and courage like mixed together? How does courage
Mm,
form that destiny like you were talking about earlier?
yeah, that is such a great and powerful question. I think that we get seduced in our lives that somebody is going to hand us a manual that's going to say, do these 10 things or 20 things or 50 things. And if you do so, you're going to have a happy, successful, loving life. My experience has been when I focus too much on outcome, I lose my way. When I focus on action, I tend to open doors and windows that I never knew existed. And what is on the other side of those are things that I never thought would be there. Maybe they're people, maybe they're job opportunities, or maybe they're ideas. And so I think we oftentimes seduce ourselves that if we just did these 10 things, that if I focus on my career and if I just get this promotion, then it's going to get me into the C-suite. And if I'm there, then my CV is going to look like this, and then I can get in it. I'm not here to say that I make judgments on anybody's career path or relationship path. But I have found that when we place our effort on action rather than outcome, and actually this kind of falls into a little bit of a maybe a Buddhist mindset, that if we reduce our attachment to outcome and just move into a space where whatever happens after a courageous act is destiny, sometimes good, sometimes unanticipated, that we start to lead a magical existence. And I can actually prove this point. This is not conjecture, and I'll tell you why. I talk to people all the time, CEOs, creatives, moms and dads, teens, about leading a courageous life. And I often ask them about those unintended, sometimes tragic moments in life, those things that have happened to us that we didn't think we were going to get through, that we didn't think we were going to survive, that tested us in some way. We certainly didn't choose them. And when we think back on those moments, sometimes those are the most defining moments in our lives. They give us the strength and they set us on a path that we never would have been on otherwise. So we didn't choose those things. They came out of left field. But we survived them. We got through it, and it opened up a pathway for us. So trying to choose outcomes, in my mind, is a lost cause. First of all, we can't do it as humans. We think we can have a crystal ball and know what the future is going to create, but we don't. Instead, if we focus on brave, consistent action, if we focus on vulnerability, on service, on making somebody else's day, on smiling at somebody who wasn't anticipating it, um, things start to open up for us. And I think that's when we start to lead a destined life. And I guess I'll finish by giving you a tangible example from my life. I always was doing this as a side gig, as you know, Minling. I had a wonderful job as CEO of a commercial real estate company. I loved it, and for a long time it was very challenging and growth oriented. And I then had this separate track of my life where Scare Your Soul was this burgeoning organic movement of people pushing comfort zones together and traveling the world together and doing all kinds of wonderful things. But I always saw it as this parallel path. And then I realized, you know what? I'm feeling too comfortable in my own job as CEO of a real estate company. I've been doing it for 22 years. And although it certainly had its challenges, my growth trajectory had plateaued. And my girlfriend and I were in Portugal, and I looked at her one day after spending some time off the grid and thinking, I said, I'm going to go home and quit my job. And I'm going to gift my salary to everybody else in our company. And I'm going to leap off the cliff. And that felt both scary and exhilarating. And that for me was walking my talk. It was stepping into moments of discomfort for a worthy goal, as I mentioned at the beginning of our talk, Minling. And so this year for me, since January 1st, has been every day pushing myself to have conversations like we're having right now, which, I had anxiety this morning. I want to provide value and want to connect with all of you. I want this to be meaningful. I do speeches now in front of thousands of people. I lead workshops. I'm going to be headed to Peru with a group of people in June. All things that push me, but are in service. And so if I can help others step into those moments in their lives, that destiny is fulfilled for me, and it allows them to fulfill their own individual destinies.
It's so beautiful, like just watching your transformation, since I've known you for so long. And I calculated it's actually more than 10 years, like 15 years. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're that old. It's been so long. But but yeah, it is allowing yourself to take those steps, even if you feel anxious, even if you feel like you're not sure what the next steps are. And I want to go back to this part about anxiety because I think a lot of people get paralyzed by anxiety.
Yeah.
And how do you take action, or how do you soothe your anxiety, or what do you do to actually still move forward? I know you have that accountability, but like, is there something else that you can provide or teach people to soothe their anxiety or to move forward despite their anxiety?
We talk about this a lot in the Scare Your Soul community. I talk about it I put out a weekly challenge newsletter and talk about it all the time as well. I love this quote. So Fritz Perls, who was the kind of the father of the Gestalt movement, said, I have it in front of me, anxiety is excitement without the breath. And I love that because what that means is excitement, anxiety with breath is excitement. So I think that there is a whole lot around anxiety that is, can we relax into it? Can we allow it and not have to shove it or numb it? Can we see it as a type of excitement in our lives? There's great research out there, and anybody can Google it, around the fact that excitement and anxiety reside in the same parts of our brains. And that there's great work by a researcher named Allison Woods Brooks, who I think is at either Harvard or at Stanford, who did great work where she had groups of students have to do karaoke. They had to sing "Don't Stop Believin'" by Journey. Um, and beforehand, half of the students, she had them say to themselves, "I'm super excited about doing this." And the other half said, "I'm super anxious about doing this." The ones who said to themselves, no difference in singing, just difference in what they were, their internal self-talk. They did better. They were there literally. They had greater capacity to do what they were doing, and second of all, they enjoyed themselves more and wanted to do it again. So there is a lot of work around mindset with these anxious moments. I will say. And Alice Waters, the great writer, talks about this, that when you're in moments of growth, you are going to feel discomfort. You're going to feel anxiety. You're going to feel out of place. And those are hard emotions in this world. We're not used to it. We're used to distracting and numbing or feeling in our zone of genius all the time, or at least wanting to be there. And this work puts us out of that comfort bubble. And so it can bring up moments of anxiety. But there is this kind of duality that I'd like to mention to the group that I think is really helpful. And a lot of researchers talk about it as toxic fear and real fear. And we're talking now about how fear leads to feelings of anxiety. Real fear being the kind of fears that keep us safe, which is, of course, the elemental reason that we feel fear in the first place. As anybody knows, fear is a primal emotion that has been with us from the very beginning. It kept us alive when we were hunter-gatherers, and to this day, a fear is an essential part of our lives. It keeps us physically, emotionally, mentally safe, and that's really, really important. For those people whose amygdalas have been somehow ruptured or damaged and they don't feel fear, they lead a very dangerous life. It's not the kind of life any of us want to lead. So by the way, parenthetically, when you hear people tell you 10 ways to be fearless or how to implode or conquer fear, we don't want that. We don't want to be fearless, actually. But we want to be able to harness fear and dance with it. We don't want it to stop us when it's in the other category, which researchers call toxic fear. That is the fears that I guarantee you everybody on this call, everyone on this fireside chat has. Fears of rejection, fears of failure, fears of the unknown and of change, fears of success. What happens in my life if I actually succeed and fulfill some of my dreams and my goals? When we ruminate about the future and we create scenarios within us about certain outcomes that haven't yet happened, we feel this toxic fear. And I think a big part of this, and this is really simple, this is not some, crazy new technique, is really just mindfulness. It is understanding what that fear feels like in our bodies. As Fritz Perls suggests, breath work, bringing breath to that sense of anxiety, and being able to sit with it, maybe even label it. This is what this fear is in me at this moment. This is what this anxiety is bringing up for me in this moment. And then getting to a point, and I really do think having a courage practice hones this, is this something that is serving me, or is this something that is holding me back? And I would tell you, and of course, there is no certainties in life, but if we can sit with those anxieties, with those fears, let them live and breathe within us, and decide this is something indeed that I should pay attention to and avoid, not have in my life if possible, or gravitate towards, move through, push towards. That essentially leads to a life where anxiety actually becomes almost like a signal that something matters. that it's not something to avoid, that this is something to pay attention to. Our probably classic Scare Your Soul challenge, which I don't know, maybe I've written 600 or 700 challenges in these years, is to buy a cup of coffee for a stranger and have a conversation with them as you're waiting for the coffee. Simple, doable for almost everybody, but brings up this moment of anxiety. And I have it, I swear to you, even though I've probably done it 100 times, every single time, because I don't know what's going to happen. And when I do it, maybe 99 times out of 100, somebody says, "Oh my God, that is so nice. Sure." And then we end up having this conversation. I meet somebody new, they meet me. I get a little insight into their life, and then I send them off with this beautiful nugget of joy, maybe small, but enough that maybe the ripples are going to start to ripple even further. And maybe they're going to do something for somebody else, and they're going to do something for somebody else. What a beautiful legacy that one small act of courage had. Not singing in front of 100 strangers or not quitting a job, but literally small acts every day, even though we feel the anxiety, because I know in my heart of hearts that act of service is going to ripple outwards.
There was like so many nuggets in what you just said about anxiety. I love the part where you said, anxiety and excitement are the same thing. It's just without the breath. And I'm like, oh, that's a good point because we hold our breath. We're like, oh my gosh, we tense up, and if we can relax into it and allow it to flow through us, we are not so paralyzed. And that's really a helpful tool, I feel like, for a lot of people. And you're right, like there's when we're focused on the outcome, then we get anxious. But when we're just being present, I think that's another point that you're bringing in is like you're just being present to like the action versus thinking about like 10 steps later what's going to happen and all the negative things that could happen because I know that our brains are wired for the negative outcome just because that's how we are wired as human beings so that it keeps us safe, right? So I love those practices that you mentioned and those wisdom nuggets of wisdom. I would love to talk a little bit about, I know you have a framework for people that want to take leaps. And I would love for you to share a little bit about what that framework is and like how to assist people, because I know a lot of people in this community and other communities are looking to make the leap or figuring out what they want to do or their next steps and their next big life journeys. And would love for you to share that with us.
My pleasure. This is super, super simple. I know many of you may leave this call and say, like, I didn't hear statistics and I didn't hear studies. And of course, we could go there, but I think sometimes in life, there's beauty in simplicity, and we sometimes overlook those very elemental parts of our lives that maybe we overcomplicate. So this is a framework, but it's a very, very simple framework, and it's based on questions, 5 questions, and this usually will get people off the dime. Like if they're feeling stuck about something, either in their work life or in their personal life, this tends to be able to provide some energy and some clarity around it. And the first question is in the area of possibility. Okay, and the question goes like this: what is one positive change in your life or your work that you would like to grow or evolve? Okay, what is one positive change in your life or your work that you would like to grow or evolve? And we don't have time on this call, but if we had some more just oxygen in the air and we had some time, we would really sit with that maybe for a minute and really think about what is that thing in our life or our work that we would want to grow or evolve. So that's kind of step one of the framework. The second one deals with the power that exists within all of us already. So that is a question of what have you done already in life that is just like this, right? So like what have you already done where you've succeeded in something like this? What are the strengths that you've leveraged, in other words? Really like a cool way to think about this. I've already done something like this, okay? Again, super simple, but that's really, really helpful. Third part of the framework is about relationships. What relationships can I bring into this that would assist me in doing this work? Maybe it's an accountability partner, like we talked about earlier. Maybe it's a colleague. Maybe it's a mentor, right? Maybe it's a resource out there. So, what relationship could help me make this possible? The next phase is really all about dreaming, and that is what would success look like if I did this thing, if this change happened? Like literally, what would my life feel like, sound like, look like? Okay, grounding ourselves in that sense of possibility. Okay, so now we have this whole kind of arc of resources, of accountability, of visualization of success. Then it becomes really about what would actually move us towards that in a small, actionable way. Okay, so like, what is the smallest first step that you could take to fulfilling this particular goal? This is again rooted all the way back in possibility. And then as we work through this framework, I oftentimes, and I was just on a great podcast for Glassdoor, where I literally, in the middle of the podcast, gave people 3 minutes to pause and to go out and send that email, make that call, sign up for that class, text that person, all of the, like literally take action right now. So working through this framework, and if anybody wants to email me, obviously you'll have my contact information through Grateful Giraffes. I'm happy to give you this framework. It's super, super powerful. It can be done both in your personal life and in your work life. And it tends to be able to allow you to move forward in one aspect of your life. And then we get this beautiful sense of let's do more. Let's keep the practice going. And then the courage practice takes hold. But this is, I think, a great framework for people to kind of help get off the dime and into action.
I love that. Those are such powerful questions. And I'm like, okay, Scott, hold me accountable to the answering those for myself. Because I'm like, okay, I need to answer these. Um,
Mhm.
these are really, really powerful. And I'm like also thinking like, who am I gonna have as my accountability partner and who do I want to reach out to? So I feel like this conversation has sparked a lot. I'm just speaking for myself, but I'm also probably for others, like a lot of thoughts of where we can get started. And it doesn't seem as scary as maybe before this conversation. And I just want to say that we really appreciate like you sharing this words of wisdom and it's just yeah, very inspiring. I would love to have you answer one last question and then we can have you share a little bit about like how people can get in touch with you. But um, any last words of wisdom or advice, like one takeaway that you want to leave people with, so on their journey, because we talked about so many different things. I want one thing that somebody could take away with.
I'm going to tack back to a conversation you and I had previously, and that is the one word that I think oftentimes could be the most powerful is the word surrender. Um, we talked a lot about action in this call, and I believe it is the root of a courageous life. But sometimes the action that we need to take is just surrendering to the flow. Somebody told me, and I'm sorry that I don't know the source. I hope to find it sometime soon. I was at a retreat center called Kripalu up in Massachusetts, and somebody said to me, sometimes our life, if you throw a reed into a river, a moving river, sometimes it feels like the reed is perpendicular and is kind of just moving slowly down the river. It feels like it's kind of there's a friction to it. And sometimes the reed is flying down, like it's in the flow of the river. And I feel like when we have the courage to surrender to the life that we're meant to live, the decisions that we know we need to make, the relationships in our lives that we want to enhance, the things that are on our list that we're not doing that we know we need to do, the reed starts to shift from perpendicular to literally flowing down the river. That to me leads to a life that is destined to be rich and interesting and adventurous and connected and innovative. That's a beautiful thing. So to have that beautiful sense of surrender and to realize that surrender is a courageous action. It's just an action of not doing and not putting that outcome out there. And I know surrender is an important word for you as well. And I just think it is, if I could leave one thing, it's surrender into the person that you are meant to be. And don't let those toxic fears of rejection, of failure, of what others may think, of the unknown, of change, let them flow along with you, and lead the life that you are destined to lead.
That's so beautiful. It's so true. It's like when we can surrender, we can just allow life to take us forward. And sometimes that that path takes us to like those courageous acts, you know, once we can pass through those courageous acts, it opens up another door and it just unlocks for us. And then you just continue to surrender and flow. So I think that's so beautiful. I would love for you to share how people can get in touch with you, like if they want to, you know, you know, ask any questions about the courage movement or join Scare Your Soul. What how can people get in contact with you?
Sure. So scareyoursoul.com is where you can sign up for all of our free challenges and learn more about the community. There are free downloadable challenges. It's a great kind of general resource. If you want to get in touch with me personally, my kind of speaking and workshops, and as I mentioned, I'm leading a retreat to Peru in June. That is scottsimon.us. So please, by all means, connect with me. I'd love to hear what other people are doing in their lives courageously. And if there's any way that I can be of service to people or companies, I love doing it. And everything then on the Scare Your Soul side, all of our challenges and our newsletters, all of them are free, and our community is really special, just like yours is. People who are out there pushing their comfort zones and sharing it with each other. So it's a special community we love and welcome any of you to be a part of it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you for coming on and sharing your wisdom with us, and we're very, very grateful. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Great being with all of you.
Yeah.